everybody.
Mm.
A somber, strange sort of morning where we all feel a bit
Well,
discombobulated.
well, because there's nothing quite like something like this to sort of remind you of the passage of time. I feel like an era has ended. I feel like an era has ended. And I think, can I just say, I mean, I posted on Instagram about this. I do think she was, you know how the BBC is often described as auntie? I think she was the nation's grandmother. And to some, your mum, who I saw briefly last night, who was shocked by how much it caught her.
Yeah, my mum is not an emotional person at all, if you're watching, Mum. And yeah, I felt really sad last night when she said that she felt sad and that it really taken her by surprise. But I mean, she, you know, my mum was in the air raid shelters. She was there through the war, and there is something extraordinary about that generation. I remember when your nan, who was the same generation as the Queen, when she kept going in and out of hospital and kept battling whatever was thrown at her. And I remember the nurse saying, there is something about the women of this generation, you know, there were all these women in their 90s that we cannot put our finger on, but they are so strong and so stoic and so able that they do almost give you a sense that they're never going to leave.
Never going to die, yeah. There's a sort of immortality. I mean, I genuinely thought Nan would never go. And I think the nation probably...
And your Nan said she was a bit worried she was never going to go, do you remember?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where, and, you know, lots of... And I think the thing about death, and the thing about death of an old member of the family, is that we can all in some capacity relate to it because we all go through it in some way. And I think what's happened as a nation is there's that conveyor belt of life. There's been an inevitability to this for so long because she's 96. And like my nan, I said it yesterday, my nan would often say when you'd go and you'd see her and you'd say, oh, how are you, Nan? She'd go, I'm terminal. And there's that sense of, you know it's coming, but you all choose to bury your head in the sand. So I think everyone is in shock because we've chosen not to entertain it.
Exactly, and I mean, yesterday was a strange day. We came off air on Loose Women. Of course, you're in a bubble there. You don't know anything that's going on. And remember, I came downstairs, and there was the whole production team were very sort of quiet. And I was like, "What's going on? What's going on?" I just had no idea. And they said, you know, well, we didn't know all the way through the show whether we were going to have to pull the show. Why? Well, the Queen isn't. I've since heard that when they say comfortable, that is the
sort of trigger word.
No, that's the agreed secret word.
That's
to
what
the
I meant.
press. So it was strange, and then I went out to lunch with Kay because I haven't seen her ages, Strictly, and with Lee and with Sinetra, and we were just sitting there and we were just waiting for the news. We knew we were almost certain the news was going to come, and we were all struck by that. Oh my God, everyone will remember where they were and who they were with when you heard the news. Now, you were actually with all of you guys, weren't you?
Yeah, well, we'd gone live 2 minutes before it was formally announced. I mean, there was a sense that many of us knew it had happened because I think it was spreading like wildfire.
You know people in the news, don't you?
Exactly.
That are giving you sort of tips.
Yeah, and so there was that knowledge, but I thought when we got to 6:30, not that a recovery was happening, but I thought there's going to be a delay on the news. So yeah, I was with you. It happened on the television, didn't it, behind us? So yeah, it was a curious moment. Jackie Valino, I was with Mark, bless you.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you will all remember that you were with Mark. You'll remember you were with them.
Yeah,
I remember that I was with Lee, and we were in Soho House, and you're not even allowed your phones in there, but you know you have to do everything sort of under the table. But they let us have the phone out on the desk, and it was ages. We knew that there's a protocol that it either has to be told at 6 o'clock in the evening or 8 a.m. in the morning. That's just the protocol in place. So we thought we're going to hear at 6, and then Hugh Edwards, it was 6:05, and so we thought, oh, we're probably not going to hear till 8 a.m. or is she actually dead, you know? And then so we were all chatting, and then suddenly Lee went, oh my God, there it is. And we were just so shocked. I didn't believe it. It's like when anybody dies, I just actually didn't believe it. And Lee was sort of panicking, going, do you think I should tell the whole room? It's so funny. I don't think, because people are eating and they don't know the Queen's dead. People are drinking and they don't know the Queen's dead.
Yeah.
So it all felt really unreal. And then I got back and your mum said to me, you know, are you upset? And I said, well, no, I don't think so, because I am always relieved when somebody that has lived a long age dies, having still been standing, having still communicated. I mean, she was working up till 2 days ago. You know, unless you can be immortal, which you can't, it was a good time for her to go rather than suffering with a terrible stroke or more disability or whatever. But then as the night went on last night, and then when you know, had that message from my mum saying she felt upset, you popped over to mum, didn't you? And you said she looked really upset. And then this morning, it's really hit me.
Well,
as
she
I'm
said,
sure
she actually said as she came down the stairs, she was giving me something. She said,
Betty.
yeah, and she was a bit sort of shaken, and she said, she's always been there.
Yeah.
And you saw, and I think this
And
is a
listening,
really
I think, on
important
the
moment. I
radio
really
as
want to
well.
stress this because I've already picked up a sense of this. If you're of a much younger generation, and you know, there are memes and people having a laugh and people, I really think there are a few occasions where it really pays to just respect the older generations. This is going to hit principally, not all, but principally much older people a lot more than it is younger people. And I think younger people
And
should
with their own mortality.
I hate this sort of lecturing young people, but I think it really is a moment to kind of respect what's going on for older people. It doesn't mean they're royalists, it doesn't mean they're monarch, it doesn't mean they agree with the history of the empire, it doesn't mean that they are sanctioning terrible atrocities, and that none of that. This is 2022. The world is in a parlous state. There is a huge shadow and spectre overhanging most of us. And I think when you have aspects of your society, and I think the Queen was one of those very rare things where you feel there's some cloak of security, though it's totally intangible and probably totally fraudulent in many ways, but there is a cloak of sort of comfort and sanctity and safety with her. When she goes, I think it's all right for the nation to feel a little bit rattled at a very curious time. So I think for much younger people who think it might be really funny just to kind of go, oh, what the hell, what's all this fuss about? Oh, God. You know what? It doesn't happen often. Just take a moment and respect your elders.
It's been fascinating, hasn't it? I mean, Nick Ferrari has been saying over and again what she's gone through, all the different phases of the world that she's seen.
Yeah.
I mean, what a life.
Yeah.
What a life. I didn't realise how rooted in her religion she was, that she read the Bible every day, prayed every day, that she really did see her role as that of service, and she drew inspiration. Apparently, this is somebody that worked quite closely, from Jesus, and Jesus washing the feet of others. And she saw it as her mission because she was very keenly aware that people were very nervous about meeting her. And she was fascinated by people and people's stories. And she saw it as her job to just make everyone she met feel comfortable. Do you know the thing I loved about her most? Was how funny she was. I don't think I ever heard her say anything that I didn't laugh out loud. She was incredibly witty, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Years and years ago, there was a fantastic documentary with her, and she was so funny.
Well, I've got some quotes by her.
Have you?
We can run through some of her more philosophical quotes, but also some of her very funny quotes. Zoe, it's sickening seeing the memes. Whatever we think of the royal family, she was still a 96. I know. I mean, I do have to say, this really bugs me. I have a overarching fear about the increasing lack of empathy and a sort of barbarism that is creeping into society. It's like a total lack of compassion or emotional depth. And I think in a moment like now, regardless of what you feel, regardless of whether you're a Republican, regardless of whether you're, just
Thank God
if
I
you've got
haven't seen
nothing
any of
nice
them.
to say nothing.
I haven't seen any of
If
them.
you've got nothing, well, I haven't, but I just know I can feel that burgeoning sense of wanting to mock. And it distresses me that actually people can't stop them. Just because you can speak on all these platforms negatively doesn't mean you should. No. I just don't get it. Just shut the fuck up.
Lots of people here talking about the double rainbows.
I couldn't believe that. I could not believe that. Has anyone seen the photo? The photo is absolutely astonishing. Yeah. At the very point, well, I mean, obviously it wasn't at the point that she died, because she died much earlier in the day, but it's, in terms of symbolism, what else? So you were saying, as you move through the evening, is it a cumulative effect on you?
Absolutely. Yesterday, this was literally my reaction. Oh, I feel sad, but I'm glad that she was still standing, because I feel that way about all the elderly people I know. I want them to still be standing. And she was a very proud woman, and she loved her job, and she's had an extraordinary life. Of course, immortality would be the preferred option, but if not, that is the way to go. That is the way to go, to be standing for your last few days and then to drift off.
There's some lovely words coming through here. Laura Lou, my nan is 96 and on her deathbed. She wants to go now the Queen is gone. I'm unable to visit her, and seeing Will and Harry go up to her is very emotional. Yeah, I think Harry didn't make it in time, did he? I'm not too sure if Will did.
There's quite a few people saying, do you think
Rainbows
people
over
got
Windsor
there?
as well.
Yeah, quite a few people saying that. Do you think they got there at time? Well, all this sort of chatter around, the building yesterday was, they think it was around 1:30 that, because that's when the notes were being passed in Parliament. Liz Truss left, didn't she? But then yesterday I heard on the radio that it was 4:00 that she went. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't know when Charles and Camilla were there early, weren't they? They were the first there. Yeah.
Rainbows over both, Windsor and Buckingham Palace, quite something.
Really?
Elijah, you just said the Queen was a constant in an inconstant world.
That's what I was saying to Mark. What was her superpower? Her superpower was incredible consistency. She was unflappable. She had no ego. She responded and reacted to in every engagement she did. You knew exactly what you were going to get. And if you think about children, why children watch the same cartoon over and over again, because they get an enormous sense of security from knowing exactly what's going to happen. And that was the Queen, wasn't she? She was just more or less wear the same thing, but in a different colour. She would nod in exactly the same way. People knew where they were with her. And of course, those incredible speeches that we've all been hearing this morning, and you just forget how meaningful her big speeches of her reign were. I mean, for me, I think mostly the one at the point that she came in the pandemic and spoke at a point that we felt nobody that was
In governance.
above us in governance really was feeling anything like we felt. And I sobbed when she, at the time of the pandemic, when she said, "We will see our families again." We will cry again. We will. And then at the end she said, "We will meet again." But again, the way she delivered that speech, it had no ego. It had no... True. She just delivered it. And you felt safe from it. I know that seems crazy, but I did get a sense... And I'm not a mad royalist in any sense, but it was that nan thing, a safe nan, a safe elder person. And
entirely agree.
Yeah.
Entirely agree. I mean, and also I remember around the Diana time, when Diana died, a lot of critics saying things, I think I probably said it too, why is everyone feeling it so keenly? They didn't know her. And I think, I'm not one for national identity and all that, and huge nationalism and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was because she was quite unegotistical and was just a constant and was a figurehead and was, diplomatic and allowed others to shine and what have you. And interestingly, I heard someone saying, someone who worked with her, one of her greatest qualities was that she was willing to listen to advice. She was willing to listen to advice, and that's a major skill when you're in such a rarefied world, to actually listen to advice. And she deferred to those around her.
yeah. It's the humour I keep thinking of. Like, somebody just said that apparently her meeting with Boris, because Boris, of course, was the Prime Minister that met her the least because of the pandemic, so it was all over Zoom. But apparently they did share quite a jokey sort of relationship at points. And apparently after the Nick Hancock affair, it wasn't a Zoom, it was a meeting. And she talked about, he said he's an energetic chap. I mean, just so dignified. I think she kind of sums up what people abroad think of the English, and then unfortunately they will see us in Magaluf and God knows where else. Yeah. But frightfully, cups of tea and dignified silence, and then dry wit, that sarcastic wit. She was very funny her last birthday when she was cutting her cake, and somebody said something. She said, "You mean I'm not going to get a slice on my birthday?" She was very good at being self-deprecating, I think, and that is an incredibly charming skill. And she had an enormous skill with people. And when you think how she grew up very isolated from other people, that was something that she really must have seen as her job, and she trained herself.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Paddington Bear, I know.
Yeah, Paddington. And also was it the Olympics, the whole James Bond thing with Daniel Craig? It's very funny. Here's a couple of quotes from her that are quite funny.
Quintessentially British, exactly, Rena Ron.
Apparently, when Margaret Thatcher felt faint at an event, Queen Elizabeth said, "Oh, look, she's keeled over again." She also said of the Everly brothers performing Cathy's Clown, "They sound like two cats being strangled." When she met Eric Clapton, she said to him, or asked him, "Have you been playing a long time?"
I know somebody that went to the palace, they were getting an award, and they said they were so shocked when she walked into the room and she had a handbag. She carries a handbag around the palace.
Absolutely. Well, she says about her purse that she said the reason she carries it around is that Buckingham Palace is such a large place. I quite like that. It's the idea that she might always lose it. On why she wears bright colours, she said, "If I wore beige, nobody would know who I am." This really made me laugh. An exhibition of Lucian Freud, who famously did a portrait of her, it was a much debated portrait because it wasn't particularly flattering. But then nothing Lucian Freud does is. The Queen told her aide she'd been very careful to make sure she was not photographed between a pair of those great thighs. During the same trip, when asked if she'd ever been painted by Lucian Freud, she said yes, but not like that.
Not quite like that.
Not quite like that. Very funny.
An investiture ceremony, a member of the Queen's staff dropped the cushion holding the medals. "Just put them back any way you can. I'll give them anything and can sort it out afterwards."
So she's going to thrust anything on them.
I love that one.
This story, which I thought was really lovely, was the infamous story of when she was walking. She was in Scotland.
Look at that lovely
photo of the Queen and Prince Charles
howling with laughter.
Roaring with laughter. But this was the story of when she was walking with an aide, former Royal Protection Officer Richard Griffin, and they bumped into walkers, and the hiker asked her had she ever met the Queen, because she said she lived locally, and she said she had not. And then they asked her security personnel whether oh no, that's right, the Queen said, quick as a flash, the Queen said, "I haven't met the Queen, but Dick here meets her regularly." At which point they asked for a photo to be taken of themselves with Dick, and she said to Dick, "I can't," and then they took another photo with the Queen, not knowing it was the Queen, and she said, "I can't wait to see their faces when they get the photos back home and realise they met me." Which I just thought was lovely.
Yeah, childish, childish, and playful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But she also had some sort of more meaningful quotes, which obviously the one that you like to quote a lot.
I always write this to people. Grief is the price we pay for love.
Yeah.
Apparently, I was just listening that it comes from something else, and it's what she said at the after the Twin Towers. I think wasn't it? It was what she. I think there's a monument. Isn't there in Battersea Park with it on?
Possibly.
Grief is the price we pay
I like
for
this
love.
one.
It's a beautiful saying. Mark hates it, but I love it.
I don't hate it. What I think about it, no, I don't hate it at all. I think
You've always said you don't like
no,
it.
I haven't. I hate the use of platitudes ever to kind of get one through grief. I think they're insufficient. But I think as a philosophical idea, I think it's entirely true, and I quote it to people a lot.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, but this I thought was really interesting when she says we all need. She was a quote about the importance of reflecting on things. I thought this would be good for mindfulness apps. Let's maybe pop a few memes with her nice quotes on it. We all need to get the balance right between action and reflection. With so many distractions, it's easy to forget to pause and take stock.
And I suppose, her way of doing that, because she was very rooted in a religion, was to pray. But actually, that is great advice. We all run around like headless chickens. And it's always, my dad always says, just stop. Just calm down. Just listen to the birds. Just sit and look out of the window. Because we're just all like, and it is something that comes with age, but why do we have to wait until we're in our 80s and 90s? Why don't we listen to these very smart, wise old people and take their advice?
Rather than just kind of marginalising them and making them silent. But this quote on women I thought you'd like.
It has been women who have breathed gentleness and care into the harsh progress of mankind. Oh my God!
It's good, isn't it?
Oh! It has been women who have breathed gentleness and care into the harsh progress of mankind.
It's a goodie.
Do you love that one, guys?
And on her public persona, I love this. I have to be seen to be believed. which she doesn't mean in any
That
egotistical way.
is
She literally means.
fantastic.
I know. I just love that. Literally.
And
She
she's
has
probably
to be.
seen so many people go,
Yes.
oh my God,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
It's that famous thing. I mean, to see a famous person is always like just so shocking, isn't it? You just can't believe they're real. And then, yeah. Okay.
On children, she said, children teach us all a lesson, just as the Christmas story does, that in the birth of a child, there is a new dawn with endless potential.
Wow.
Suddenly makes sense of having kids. I've often asked
What
the
did she
question.
say about Philip? What's the quote?
On Philip, on our late husband Philip, he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these
That's it,
years.
yeah.
I and his whole family in this and many other countries owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim or we shall ever know. His sense of service, intellectual curiosity and capacity to squeeze fun out of any situation were all irrepressible. That mischievous, inquiring twinkle was as bright at the end as when I first set eyes on him.
God.
Oh, fucking hell. Excuse my language. Oh, my God.
Oh. But but that's why yesterday I said, well, I'm happy that she's gone. Not very, very ill. She's gone and she's had a great love in her life. She's seen the most extraordinary things. She's travelled everywhere. She's met incredibly exciting, and God, how many boring people did she have to meet? She's had a life. My God, she's had a life.
I love this quote. Listen to this.
I love that picture.
When Princess Michael of Kent said in an interview that the Queen's corgis should be shot, the Queen reportedly said they're better behaved than she is. Very. I mean, the thing with your mum is her really kind of acerbic wit. We
She's
really
so like my
relate to
mum.
it. Yeah, so
She
relate.
even looks a bit. My mum looks a bit like her.
Yeah, she does.
I love this. After a concrete brick fell onto the Queen's car during a visit to Belfast, she shrugged and said, "It's a strong car."
Yeah, quite something. This for me was one of the weirdest developments in the whole yesterday.
My mum looks so like her.
Has anyone else seen what Vladimir Putin said?
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was a moment to potentially strike up diplomatic kind of dialogue, it's now.
You know how sometimes a death or a birth can bring people together?
Absolutely.
I literally felt that yesterday. I
Yeah.
felt like a glimmer of hope. Is this his way of saying, come on, guys?
I thought, fucking
Wouldn't
hell, it's
that
got
be
humanity.
amazing?
Possibly humanity. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday extended his condolences to Britain for the irreparable loss of Queen Elizabeth. In a message to Charles, King Charles, Putin said the Queen rightfully enjoyed the love and respect of her subjects as well as authority on the world stage. He added, "I wish you courage and resilience in the face of this difficult, irreparable loss. May I ask you to pass on sincere condolences and support to members of the royal family and the entire people of Great Britain."
I mean,
Who'd have thunk that?
but doesn't that say so much about the Queen? He has so much poisonous hate for us.
Yeah.
And that's
she
who
even cuts
she
through
was.
that.
She cuts through that. She cuts through beauty.
In a way that no
Our
politician
common
can.
day Hitler, he's a monster. And yet the Queen cuts through that.
Like she did with a sword through a cake.
Yeah, there's a moment of silence, isn't there? A minute of silence at 12 o'clock. And then the bells are going to ring. And I've just heard on the radio that they've asked for every church and every... What's it called, people that pull... It's quite a long name.
Well,
people
I was
that pull
talking
bells.
yesterday about the leather covers they're going to put on the bells, so they sound more mournful. They were frantically trying to make more yesterday, leather manufacturers, for the bells, so that the sound of the bells isn't that sort of light, bright sound, but is actually a mournful sound. I was saying yesterday, I'll never forget. For some reason, I had to be in
think a
central
light,
London
bright sound is
when
better.
when Diana died, and the sound of just bells in London is quite chilling. Actually,
I think the light and bright sound is lovely because I think we are also celebrating her life, aren't we? We are celebrating a lifelong life. Was she 96?
96, yeah. Yeah, Charles is king. He is naturally and has to be king. There is an official ceremony, but he is king. He is king. I mean, if the government decided not to
Charles
sanction it
III.
or anything like that, he could go rogue and he'll still be king. He can't not be king. So, yeah, this idea that it can't happen until is kind of, it's a fallacy, really. It's just, it's tradition, it's all that kind of malarkey.
If you saw the episode of Loose Women a few months ago, it was such a funny episode, but it was Judy talking about her meeting Prince Charles and Camilla the day before. And she just absolutely loved them. She said they have got such a way with people. They just chat so easily. He was funny, he was warm. Camilla was just adorable and sort of gently taking the piddle out of him. You know, and they're next. I mean, you know, and I think they're good people. I've always been a fan of Prince Charles.
Yes,
and I was
right.
saying to Mark this morning that so many of the his passions that people have laughed at him over the years have all become huge topics now. Do you remember all that stuff about talking to the plants and
Do you remember
organic
when? Yeah,
food
yeah,
and
absolutely.
the planet and
Yeah.
everything is now what we are desperately scrabbling to
I remember. I mean,
take action on.
it's the most tangential connection. But I remember. I mean, obviously, you were mentioning the Richard E. Grant Taste of My Life. When we did a Taste of My Life with Vanessa Redgrave, do you remember that curious phone call we got at the office from the BBC saying, "Can you please send, as a
Yes.
matter of urgency, a copy of the Vanessa Redgrave film?" And this was around Mother's Day. And I said, "Yeah, of course." I said, "Can I ask why?" And they said, "Buckingham Palace has requested it."
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know who at Buckingham Palace requested it, but they requested the film. You know, they used to, I think, from broadcasters, request certain programmes that they had perhaps missed. Toffee. Faith Goodman. What were you just saying there? Faith Goodman. Moving story about ex-soldier with PTSD. At lunch, sat next to her, was fighting tears from memories of PTSD, and she opened a tin of dog biscuits and gave to him, and they both fed the corgis under the table. Dang. This really charmed me in London. London's black cabbies paid their respect by lining all their cars on the Mall, calling her a London girl. More than 50 black cabs lined the Mall in central London as cab drivers paid their respects to the Queen. It's things like that that reinstate your sort of faith in people, don't they? You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking how it's just
Sorry, people
crept
are
up.
crying.
No,
Yeah.
how it's just crept up on me. Just listening, because it's easy to just forget it all. I think
We've
had a
through
couple
stuff.
of years where we're just batting stuff away.
Yeah.
You know, so like yesterday I was like, oh, the Queen has died, oh, that's sad, you know. And I didn't really think I was going to think about it much. And then it wasn't till late, maybe it's a bit of shock. It was like, oh, the Queen's died, oh, will the kids be going to school, oh, will the da-da-da, you know, it all became practical things. Is this happening, will this happen? But it has crept up on me, and the enormity of it is, like even yesterday, Sinatra said, oh, I think I might go to Buckingham Palace. This was after we found out. And I was like, why? And then, and then today I'm looking and I'm thinking, why didn't I go to Buckingham Palace on the way back yesterday? I was in town. I honestly don't think I took it in yesterday.
Ross Satch, The Nation's in Shock. I tell you what,
Yeah.
if dealt with correctly, the Queen has potentially, because there's going to be bank holidays around the funeral, the Queen has, even in her death, potentially given us a final gift to pause and reflect and take a bit of time to remember all those that are dear to us. I mean, it certainly made me think a lot about my nan. I heard a guy on the radio breaking up outside Buckingham Palace as he said, "This has taken me back to my father." I think it's another gift, is that actually through her death, she's going to make us all have to stop for a moment and stop chasing our tails.
I do think that the grief is going to build. I really do. Like a bit like myself. And yesterday I was like, "Oh, the Queen's died." I've always loved the Queen, but I can feel it. And I think because there's so much grief about what we feel we've lost in this country feels so adrift. There's been so much anger. There's been so much neglect from our government. We've had the pandemic. We've got the economic crisis. So many people have lost people through the pandemic. There's been so much death. There's been people that were unable to mourn properly because of the rules that Boris and his folk put into place.
The Queen had to sit on her own.
The Queen had to sit on her own. There's still anger and bitterness about how people weren't allowed to grieve for the people that they lost. So much loss that I think the loss is going to be felt. I think this is going to build and build over each day. People are going to get sadder. I didn't take it in yesterday. I've really taken it in today, and I'm just like, yeah, because I've got a lot of grief in me for what the country's become in the last few years. I feel grief-stricken. I look at us, Mark and I have even contemplated leaving the country. That's how sad we feel about it, and about so much of what's going on. You know, everything, it seems like such a mess. The police, everything, and I think this is why it is going to hit us harder and harder, because she was a constant, and she had no ego, and we felt like she cared. We felt like she cared. You know, so
Yeah, I think well said. Well said. A couple of reports on things like obviously there are going to be some. There are going to be some. There are going to be some changes. King Charles III it takes a bit of getting used to. They're changing Her Majesty's passport office to His Majesty's, obviously.
Oh God, yeah, there'll be so many.
Post boxes. I mean, all of the ones obviously that have ER on will stay. Like there are still some with VR on. So, but that said, I rarely see new post boxes going up.
Don't worry about that, Neve. You didn't mean it. It's quite funny. He'd probably laugh, Prince Charles.
Currency, stamps. It's going to be a period of adjustment. There's a lot of admin that has to kick in. Paddington Bear also tweeted. You know, if you think of that wonderful, I mean, that was only a matter of months ago, wasn't it? And I think Maureen Lipman is canvassing for the Queen to be awarded a posthumous Oscar for her cameo opposite Paddington.
That would be nice for a family.
Yeah, that would be nice. It would be curious, wouldn't it?
Kay was telling me about a documentary that Jane Moore had recommended to her, all about the royal family, quite recently, done a few years ago. I'll get the name of it and put it under here, because she said it really is a fantastic documentary, and we like to think about them as, some people like to think of them as not a real family, and she said it's the most loving film. It's all their home movies.
Oh wow.
And there's like shots of the Queen tinkering away in a Jeep, fixing a Jeep, and picnics, and they're all very touchy and very affectionate, and lots of laughter.
Like a family.
Yeah, well, of course they're just a family. I mean, what family doesn't have its big rows and its, you know, and its dramas and its storming offs and its not talking tos? Every family has it, and they were no different. It's just for decades and decades, well, for always, they revealed nothing, but it was all going on.
Yeah, Paddington said, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." People have liked that. And obviously, the Queen's final picture was taken in front of a roaring fireplace just 48 hours ago.
Bellix, could you give us the name of it? Bellix saw it, she said it's so lovely. Right. Yeah, give us the name of it.
The Queen's final picture was her standing, looking very frail, but still standing with Philip's stick.
That's the way you want
having
to go.
seen in, I think, the 15th Prime Minister.
Which she really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I think, as I've said a number of times, unless you can be immortal, which you can't, this was the right time for her to go. It's a lot. She's been through.
And I would say that
everything.
These things don't happen often. I was saying to Kiki on this morning, I said, you know, these moments won't happen. I mean, Prince Charles, let's assume Prince Charles lives to the same age. We'll have 20, could have 20 years around that of Prince Charles. And then pretty much Prince William will probably reign for a pretty long period of time, you know, no catastrophe pending, you know. I think rather than kind of resisting and getting frustrated with the coverage, because it is going to be massive, you can always turn off and go to Netflix and watch The Crown. Apparently they stopped production for the day, didn't they, as a mark of respect. I think this is kind of these traditions and this history you don't often get a chance to watch up close. I mean, I'm fascinated by some of the moments that there are going to be. You know, she's going to be lying in state in her coffin for 4 days. You can queue, the public can pass and pay their condolences and pray in front of her coffin. She's like the Queen Mother. She will be in state, and obviously there will be a rehearsal of the funeral. You know, and then obviously there will be the funeral. I mean, London will be absolutely full to the brim. So there's all sorts of kind of bits and of course there's going to be the coronation of King Charles. These are historic moments, regardless of what you think. But I would reiterate, if you're young, if you're of an inclination to want to raise an eyebrow and be po-faced about it, just on this one occasion, for out of deference and respect to the much older generation. When your mum said that and she turned the stairs as she came down the stairs. I felt really sad.
I think that's when I really started to take it in.
Yeah.
Actually, because when I came in and your mum said, "How upset are you?" I said, "Well, you know, it's sad. The Queen has died." But actually, it's just like it's just building on. It's just remembering all the things that she's done, hearing all the people talk about all the personal stories, and yeah.
Ashley, I'm in London next week for the NTAs, but just heard it may be cancelled.
I think it will
Lots
be,
of
my
events. The
darling.
Mercury Music Awards have been cancelled. Most sporting events, bar football, they're still deciding on football, have been cancelled.
I'm pretty sure the
So, I
NTAs
think-
will be cancelled, Ashley. So if
Yeah.
you've bought a ticket and stuff, I would, yeah.
Yeah, look into the details.
Yeah.
But guys, it's a day for reflection. It's a day for thinking. It's a day for remembering our loved ones. And I think it's a day just to take stock. Take stock.
Big hugs to you all. Lots of love.
Take care, guys.